Hi, I'm Malika Bilal, filling in for Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, does science have a problem with sexism? We'll ask women working in science and tech. Our digital producer, Omar Bardar, is looking out for your live feedback. Omar, I love science, and I know that I'm not alone in that.
You're not alone, but you know, we'll have some people in our community who will probably think it's cute that you like science, but would probably want you to stick to something that is more natural to you as a woman, like art or clothing design or something, I don't know. But there are a lot of people who actually see those stereotypes as the problem as well. We have Aditi here who tweeted in saying, the problem is the perpetuation of gender stereotypes that create harmful and discouraging working environments for women in science and technology. We asked her to elaborate on what some of those stereotypes might be, and she said things like women are not interested in science and technology, and biologically, in terms of spatial skills, they might not be as capable to succeed in the field in comparison to men. For those of you at home, we want to know what you think about those stereotypes, and if you've come across any of your own, tweet us using the hashtag AJStream, and we'll try to get to those tweets during the show.
I'm excited to hear what our guests have to say about those tweets. Now, before we get into today's topic, here's a look at some of the stories the stream is following online. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. They make up a range of fields known collectively by the acronym STEM. And in most countries, these technical fields are still dominated by men. Advocates for women in STEM say the challenge remains in getting young women to keep at their studies and pursue successful careers, and that simply promoting girls' education is not enough. But to what degree are sexism and gender stereotypes preventing women from continuing their academic and professional development? Well, today we want to discuss some of the challenges faced by women in science and technology. To help us do that, in Geneva, Switzerland, Monica Pepe Altarelli, a physicist and team leader, of the LHCb project at CERN, the European Particle Physics Laboratory. In Accra, Ghana, Regina Agare, a tech entrepreneur and CEO of Saranko Solutions. From Hull in the UK, Jamen Chen, a materials science researcher from Singapore. And in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Jennifer Selvage, a materials science and engineering student at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Welcome to the stream, everyone. Regina, I want to start with you. What is it, or who is it, that inspired you to get involved in your field?
Well, for me, I didn't have a lot of role models, so I think I was inspired really by Pac-Man. So I played Pac-Man and I was amazed by it. I was like, what is this game? And I would love to do it. So, and I remember back then, you know, it was like girls don't study science, girls don't do technology. So there was a lot of girls don't do this, and the gender stereotype and the roles. I mean, coming from Ghana, a country in West Africa, you know, there was a lot of definition of what my place was supposed to be. So, and it was interesting that you said that art is natural, because for me, art was never natural. I couldn't sew or crochet. Math was very natural for me. So I don't know about art and being more natural for women.
So, Jamen, art, I love what Regina said, and of course it wasn't me, it was someone on Twitter who said that art would be more suited for us. But Jamen, I'd like your experience. What is it that led you to your field, and did it change over time? Were there expectations before you entered the field that changed once you entered?
Oh yeah, for sure. So what actually started my interest in science was really my dad, because when I was young, he just encouraged us to ask questions. And a lot of parents regret that later on, because kids, you know, when they are 2 or 3, they keep asking why. Why is the sky blue? Why is it like this? Why do I have to do this? And often parents just say, just because. But my dad never did that. And he just let us, he had a lot of patience, and he
It looks like we might have just lost Jen then, but we'll get back to what she's saying. I love what she's talking about, her dad encouraging her to do it. Oh, it looks like we have her back. Jen, do you want to finish your sentence? You're telling us about your father.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So basically, he always encouraged us to ask questions, to always ask why, and never to accept the status quo. So that, for me, really helped to encourage my career in science. And basically, I think that in my family, at least, I always felt supported to go into science. There was never a question of whether because I'm a girl, I'm not as good in science as other people.
So we have some people in our online community who are questioning the entire conversation, whether we should even be having it, essentially. We have Ali Maihu here who tweets in saying, I think science and technology, there is no spoon feeding. If she's competent, everybody will respect and welcome her. No need to politicize these fields. Jenny, from your experience in MIT, I mean, do you think that women who are competent basically face less sexism in their experience?
I don't think so at all. Actually, I like to think that I'm a really good student. I'm a thrice published author and an honors student, and probably once a week, maybe more, I have a sexist comment directed my way. And I've had professors say things like, I remember the days when men were engineers and women were flight attendants in class, and I've had TAs like hit on me, hit on my friends. It's very, very weird. I really think that's not fully accurate. No. Just no.
No, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
So I want to go to you, Monica, because we heard some of the enthusiasm of some of our other guests and why they entered this field. But then we see things like this, and I'm pulling up something on my laptop. Now, this is a study. This is done in the U.S. It's a survey of nearly 3,000 women in tech and science fields, and 57% of the women surveyed ended up quitting the field. They cited several reasons, among them compensation, macho culture, a hostile macho culture, extreme work pressure. Monica, you're at the very near the top, or at the very top of your field. It's impressive. We love having you on this show. But why do you think it is that 57% of nearly 3,000 women say they can't do it anymore?
Well, I think this is, I mean, your data probably reflect the reality. Science can be a very competitive and tough and macho field. There's no question about it. And it can be discouraging for young women. And it's in general, okay, my reality. I can only speak about reality. It's difficult for everybody. It's difficult for men and women, but in particular for women, I think things are even more difficult. It's difficult to do science at a certain level and and have a family life, for example. I think that the time, that the dedication that are required are very high, and it's difficult to match this, for example, with a private life.
So how have you, in your own life, how have you merged those two difficulties? Have you overcome those obstacles?
I think, first of all, I've been quite lucky. I think it's also a matter of luck, being in the right position, of meeting the right people. I had, a husband who shared the tasks with me. We had good salaries so that we could afford a lot of support. I had support from my family, and I worked very, very hard. There was a phase of my life in which I really had to work very, very hard. And sometimes this can be discouraging. I fully understand that.
We have people actually weighing in about this in our community, specifically about this topic. We have Arainab here who tweets in saying, as with other careers, the lack of support for mothers is what makes them leave STEM jobs. But we actually have somebody who disagrees. Yeah. Is actually the name, the name on the Twitter handle. Says tech careers actually are well paid and flexible, so they're actually ideal for women. But the advice given to women frames them wrong. And goes on to say that if you just want a job that pays well and where you can take time off to have kids, IT contractor is what she would recommend. Regina, from your experience, do you think that these fields present a particular challenge to women compared to other fields, maybe?
Oh, ideally, if you are in the tech community, like the person from Twitter said, you can sort of, work from home, but it depends on the work environment. So it depends on where you work. In certain environments, for example, in my experience, I was the only female in 2 of the banks that I worked in. And if they give me special treatment, obviously the guys are going to complain. So you try and fit in. So depending on the work environment, it's very hard. Even though it can be flexible, you're supposed to work twice as hard to prove yourself as most of the time. And if you're seen to get preferential treatment in any way, then there's like that bias of, oh, she's not good enough, she's getting preferential treatment. So it's harder to work in a team that way. So most of the time you sort of try and work in the team and forgo all those things, and you work more than the regular hours that is required. So it's very difficult if the work environment is not encouraging for women to do that.
Jenny, I wonder if you could pick up on what Regina said about having to work twice as hard. And I want to show you something before you answer that. Huffington Post Science reached out to several women in STEM and asked them for their experiences. And they shared them on the secret sharing site Whisper. This is one of them. My chem teacher said I was good enough in his subject that I could have been a boy. When I told him I was interested in a career in it, he laughed at me and said, girls don't make good scientists, they're too emotional. Jenny, you're laughing. Have you heard things like this before?
Yes, I'm laughing because I actually had a somewhat similar experience in high school. In my AP biology class, my teacher asked me, like, what are you going to major in, Jenny? English or music? And I turned to him and said, why? Because I'm a girl? And he looked so shocked and horrified, and he was like, no, well, I just assumed it was something you would like. And then I just turned to him and said, I'm planning on majoring in theoretical math currently. So,
what does that, when you get that response, what happens?
He just looked horrified and then asked someone else.
So then, does that make you want to have to overcompensate? Then that was in high school. So then when you entered MIT, do you feel like you had to overcompensate?
Yeah, definitely. I actually had a professor tell me at one point, like one of my women professors told me, like you're a woman, you're going to have to work twice as hard to get half the recognition, but I know you can do it, and I believe in you. Give it your all. You can do this. And it was hard to hear, but it was also really satisfying to hear that this person who I had so much respect for thought that I could do it and thought that I could be as good as her, because when I see some of my female professors, I just sort of see this wave of competency, because they're in this field where really they're very unwanted. In general, materials engineering is not a hugely open field to women. Engineering generally isn't. I
agree.
And they're just all there, sort of laying down the law.
Jamin, you said you agree?
I agree with Jenny. I absolutely agree with her.
Jenny has a similar experience, miles away, because, I had the same experience where I was told, girls can't do this, girls don't build rockets, because I was interested in rocket science before. And so I get it's called a 5-second shock reaction. Every time I walk into the room and I introduce myself as a software developer, I get, what? Are you serious? Somebody asked me, am I sure I understand what software development is really about? Probably I'm using Microsoft Word and I think I'm creating software. So it's interesting that we go through this. I go through this daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jamin, I hear you trying to chime in.
Yeah, I get the same experience all the time. So in Singapore, I led a lab in porous materials. And basically, maybe because I'm female and maybe because I look a little bit younger. So every time I come and give a lecture, people look at me and they're like, wait, you're the student, right? Where's your professor? Why are you giving a lecture? Who are you? And sometimes I even get put down as, hey, little girl, are you sure you know what you're talking about? That's what they tell me.
Little girl.
And that really pisses me off. Little girl.
Horrifying.
It's really
I-
dismissive.
I think
And
that
these are people who want help from me. They want help for me for consulting, and
Right.
they actually call me little girl.
Right, right.
You know, we have some of these stereotypes actually happening online as well. We have Mustafa Idris who mentioned, commented on Facebook saying, men feel scientific while women feel artistic. It is their choice and not others' choice what they choose to do. We also have this tweet from Forward Africa, although judging by the tone of the tweet, probably not so forward, which says, ever since you people, and I think women is you people, ever since you people started, have you invented anything extraordinary apart from that which was invented by male folks? Since you're one of you people,
Right, one of those you
I know
people.
that you've looked into.
Well, you're
what
right.
women have
And
achieved.
Monica, I heard you say what? So I pulled up on my screen here in anticipation of tweets like that. Some of these people who have done incredible things, Wendy Friedman is one of them. She found the rate at which the universe is expanding, and that's called the Hubble constant. Another one of them is Vera Rubin. She's an astronomer who came up with the idea of dark matter in space. So Monica, when you hear things like that, that women don't feel scientific, whatever that means,
well,
what's your
what can I
response?
say? It's a bit depressing, but I must say that okay, I agree that women must work harder to get to where they are. They must work harder because somehow they have to establish themselves, and I think that it's very typical, even in my field, to enter a room and to be the only woman. This is a rather common situation, or you know, a meeting room and it's full of men, and you are the only woman, or maybe there is another woman, but it's a completely common situation, and I don't even pay attention to that anymore, I must say. On the other hand, even if I'm very sensitive to all these points, and I try in my position to be as supportive to young women as possible, and you know, and try to promote gender diversity as much as possible. I feel that I've never I was never discriminated against. Nobody. Maybe I forgot about it. You know, maybe I'm old enough that people don't do it anymore, and you know, and I have forgotten about negative things happening in the past. But certainly at the moment, nobody ever would say something like this in a public meeting, or in front of me, or in front of you know, some of my younger women colleagues in a public meeting. This would not be tolerated.
Right, because they know better. Well,
It
Regina,
would not be tolerated.
Regina, and looking towards closing this gap online, some of the commentary we've seen have been questions that say maybe we need to change what the look of STEM is. When you say computer programmer, there is an image that comes to mind, and it may not necessarily be someone that looks like you, Regina. So I want to play you a clip. This is from the documentary She++. Have a look at what this person has to say.
So I think a big thing that deters a lot of girls and a lot of women from pursuing CS is the image that the computer scientist is this, you know, like bad hygiene person who has, you know, this pocket calculator.
Who are very antisocial.
Maybe just very sedentary and are gonna spend their time coding alone at home.
All the lights turned off, listening to music, drinking some kind of energy drink.
Not a very appealing image for a lot of people.
There's no reason it has to be that way. You do not need to go and conform to the stereotype.
So Regina, how do you go about changing that image and fighting that stereotype?
Well, first, just by my personality. So I'm very social and very bubbly, and you know, I am very feminine. I like pink, you know, and I'm not ashamed to say it.
I don't like
also
pink.
Also by even how I interact with people, so, and also showing other women, you know, especially young girls, you know, that it's a choice. You don't have to be the hoodie wearing, antisocial, you know, stuck in your room, sipping on an energy drink kind of person. you can be anything that you want to be. And I'm very vibrant and alive. And every time I speak to young girls, you know, I make sure that I look as fashionable as possible, and, you know, I show them other women in computer science that are equally very outspoken, outgoing. They're able to balance things out, because it's very important that you're well balanced. So it's not just about, you know, coding. You're able to speak and present your work. You're able to go out and explain your code. So
in a way that's accessible to other people.
Yeah. And I feel like you have to use the media also to push the message.
So, Jenny, I have a video comment here from Jacqueline I'd like you to listen to.
All right.
Yeah, sexism is probably the top factor preventing women from entering STEM careers, because for so many reasons, starting with how girls are raised with certain expectations, and even if you argue that a woman can decide for herself, like she can in my country, in the United States, that does not matter if she's not instilled with the belief that she can.
So, Jenny, what do you think is the bigger challenge between these two? Is it overcoming sexism within sort of the science industry, or is it actually the challenge at home to raise girls to believe that they can do this stuff?
I mean, I think those are sort of two very closely connected challenges, because so one of the reasons I think I have been successful in sciences is because I also have like two very supportive parents who are both engineers, who went here. They actually met here. So I've had engineering.
And here is at MIT.
At MIT, yeah, sorry. So I've had engineering. I've had like a strong woman engineering model my whole life, and then when I was in high school, I had I actually only had one woman STEM teacher, but she was a really strong like woman engineer who had become a math teacher. And I guess seeing those things made me think like, I can do this, you know, like even though the guys in the class didn't always treat me with respect and I would get mean comments from teachers and students, like I just felt like I could do it because I had that preparation. And then when I got here, it was really discouraging to hear all of the continued nonsense that I had heard in high school. But once again, seeing really strong women here has helped me a lot and like inspired me to continue on, because if they can do it, I can do it. And if I don't do it, and if me generally does not do it, then there won't be the next generation of strong women to encourage Jenny in 20 years.
Right, and those, of course, who are watching. John Min, before we head into the post-show, I'd like your thoughts on whether or not you think that this has been internalized by women. I pulled up on my screen here. This is a headline. This is from not too long ago, from March. Both genders think women are bad at basic math, and that's based on a survey. Yes, you agree, Yamin?
I actually agree. There's been a lot of research done on whether women have internalized it, and actually there is a bias not just from men but from women against other women. It's actually very insidious, because if we don't believe that other women can do it, then we're really putting ourselves down, and who's going to believe in us? Right. So. But one thing that I think is that I think that people are very focused, or maybe a little bit too focused on like, oh, you know, what do other people think about me as a woman? I feel that sometimes it's more important in science to really just focus on it because you really love it. And
John, I'm going to have to pause you there and talking about the focus and where it should come from. We'll pick it up in the post show because that's all the time we have for now. Now, on the next show, we're going to continue our science theme. Did you know that the world has lost more than half of its wildlife population over the past 40 years? We look at the causes and possible solutions on Wednesday. But stay with us. The post show is next at stream.aljazeera.com. We'll see you online. Welcome back. This is the Stream's online post show. We're talking about women and careers in science and technology. Let's get right back to the conversation. Jamin, you were making a point right before we headed into the post show.
Yeah, I was mentioning that I think that actually, if for me as an individual, if I keep worrying about what people feel about whether because I'm a woman they think that I'm not as good, then I feel that a lot of my energy is spent worrying about that rather than really focusing on my science and the work that I love. And so rather than doing that, what I do and what works for me is that I really focus on my science, I focus on my students, and I worry about what's good for them and how to encourage them and how to make sure that they have fun. And when they really have fun with their science, they don't care about gender stereotypes. So that's what I've seen in my life.
I mean, I feel exactly the same way Jamin feels, because in school, I always used to say my biggest competitor is myself. So, and when I'm working with my girls, I'm looking at how excited they are to be learning how to code and coming up with these great ideas. So I really block out everything else. You know, I just focus on the results that I'm seeing every day. Yeah.
And Monica,
yeah, I agree.
Monica?
Yeah, I fully agree. One has to be focused and ambitious. So be focused and ambitious, and forget about the rest.
And there's also the question of how much the education system basically plays into perpetuating this divide. We have Mikey here on Facebook who commented saying, I know there are tons of female science role models out there for young girls, but they aren't being taught in schools. And we talked about how this education system could be changed. We have Leslie here who said, don't imply, directing this tweet to teachers of science, saying, don't imply or directly tell us that we just won't get it. If we have difficulty, you find a better method of teaching. Jia Min, do you think that, to what extent do you think that within the educational system, whether it be the content of what is being taught or the attitudes of teachers, that is really important to focus on to try to close that gender gap in science and technology?
I think that the most important thing is really to get people excited about science, to make it more accessible. Maybe the traditional methods where it's people think that science it's very boring, it's very serious. That is not always appealing to everybody. And if it's fun, it appeals to everybody, and it makes it very much more accessible to everybody. Whether you have male or female, it doesn't matter.
Well, Monica, on this topic, I know that you told our producers ahead of the show that 8 years, at least, of your schooling were in a girls-only environment. Do you think that that played a role in where you are today?
Well, maybe, possibly, because, yeah, we were discussing about that yesterday, and indeed, during those years, there was no competition with boys. I mean, we were only girls, and some were better in maths, some were worse, but, there was no asymmetry in the treatment, based on gender stereotypes, because we were only girls by construction. So I wonder. I don't have a reply. I don't have any research data on that, but this was my situation.
So we actually have kind of an interesting concern being raised from Christina here, who tweets in saying, talent doesn't discriminate, nor should we, but let's not swing the pendulum into positive discrimination. I asked her to elaborate on what that means. She said, well, it would be sad say if women were selected for interviews purely on sex. The battle needs to be fought earlier.
Of course. I think she's right.
But Monica, do you think that this is actually a concern, that they might be forced, that in an attempt to close that gender gap, that people will start putting women who are not qualified into science roles? Is that something that we should really be looking out for?
No, people must be qualified for their job. I mean, there's no way around. And I would hate, if I thought that I had been put in a certain position just because because of gender issues. This would be really very bad. I would really not. I wouldn't want this to happen at all.
Sure.
So I'm against.
I agree with Monica, because I think you would quit. I think if you're not passionate and that is not something that you really wanted to do, you won't stay in it for long, because it's not easy. So if it's something that you just sort of fell into it because you're female, I don't think you'll survive. I think you will quit. So you have to be really competent and really focused.
I think this is sort of a false concern, though.
Well, I hear you, Jenny, so you want to go first, and then we'll go to Monica. Jenny?
So the reason I think this is a false concern is because I have actually had lots and lots and lots of people tell me that the only reason I got in here is because I'm a woman and it's so much easier for women to get into MIT. And to that, I have to look at them and say, I have gotten an A in all but one of my technical classes. Do you really think the only reason I was qualified to be at this school is because I'm a woman? That is absurd. Because
I completely agree with Jenny there.
The number of times that I have been told that is appallingly huge, like enormous, and I think a lot of people are concerned that this is going to happen, but it's not happening. It's just not.
And Monica, you wanted to say something?
No, I agree with what Jenny said. I mean, I would feel the same. So I fully support you, Jenny, on that. No, what I meant is that, well, I'm thinking more about my own situation, and I think that competency for a task is the main criteria whenever we have to find a person for a certain position. However, women should not be neglected because of their gender. They should not be forgotten because of their gender. They should be considered, as any other valid candidate for a certain position. So this is my concern.
Right.
And this is what I try to apply in my
However,
daily life.
Right. Jamin?
There is a huge concern that I have with regards to parental leave. For example, in a lot of jobs, parental leave is not actually equally distributed between the father and the mother. So for example, in Singapore, the mother gets 16 weeks of maternity leave and the father just the 1 week. And one might say that this actually helps mothers, but at the same time, there's a lot of discrimination against women in terms of employment because employers don't want to have to deal with that 16 weeks of leave. And also, oftentimes mothers who start off with that 16 weeks of maternity leave end up bearing the brunt of childcare, and this follows on into the rest of the years of that child. And so what happens is that you get a very big bias or an imbalance in the load carrying between the two parents. And this actually perpetuates the problem, I feel.
Jamin, I think it's interesting you brought that up. I actually want to play a video comment that we received, the stream received. And this is from Meg Urey. She's the director of Yale's Center for Astronomy and Astrophysics. And she talks about this, but she has an interesting take that I'd like you to have a listen to.
Issues are really important, and it's certainly a big issue on the minds of young women considering going into STEM careers, but it's not the reason women lag behind. For one thing, women without children don't progress any better than women with children as long as they're, you compare full-time workers to full-time workers. Women are more likely to go part-time when they have children, and then they do lag behind, but full-time workers don't. Also, if you look at countries with really excellent support systems for women and families, so good maternity leave, good parental leave, good daycare, those countries don't have very high percentages of women in the workforce, in the STEM workforce.
So, Jamin, she seems to say that children aren't necessarily the reason that women are leaving the field or being as efficient as their counterparts.
I actually think that there's already a pre-selection. So, for example, a lot of my peers, they decided that they didn't want to go and become professors because usually there's a tenure track. So for the first 5 or 6 years, you have to really perform very well because after that, you're judged to see whether you get tenure and continue on to become a professor or whether you have to leave the university. And a lot of women, during this time, they are maybe in their early 30s or late 20s, and that's the time when a lot of people have children. And a lot of women actually decide to leave before that. So it depends how the data is actually collected, because if you're really collecting it after these women have left, then you're not really getting the full picture.
Well, before we head off air, unfortunately, this has been a great conversation, but we do have to end it soon. I do want one closing thought from each of our guests, because it's not often that we have such expertise gathered in our virtual room. So a piece of advice for those who are watching, male or female, a piece of advice to get where you are today. Monica, I'll start with you.
I think I said it before. I think you have to be focused. You have to be ambitious. I'm talking to women, and you know, go your way, go for it, and don't listen to these to these nasty comments. Just go for it.
Nice. Regina, closing thoughts?
Yes, I would just have to say, you know, the only limits that you have is the one that you set for yourself. So as a woman, you know, don't set limits that society creates for you. There's nothing that you can't do. And, you know, your potential is great and you can do anything that you set your mind to. So never give up and always go for it.
Jamin, what's your advice?
Mine is to absolutely love what you're doing. Always have fun. And if you're having fun, it doesn't matter. Just do it and enjoy it.
And Jenny, what about you?
I think my advice would be similar to the advice that's been offered before, which is basically just push yourself as hard as you can. And when you feel like you've pushed yourself as far as you can, see if you can push yourself a little bit farther, because a lot of times you're not going to be getting encouragement from around you. You're going to have a lot of people tearing you down, and you need to be and if you want to succeed in this field, you basically need to be able to turn around, look people in the eye and say, watch me.
I'm jotting this advice down for myself. Omar, any positive, promising signs from the community?
We actually have, this probably is my favorite tweet. We have Emma here who tweets in saying, my 9-year-old will tell you off if you suggest that science is for boys. She's determined to be a scientist, and we've always encouraged that. That's awesome. And then we also have this video comment from Kajsa in Sweden. Take a listen to this.
I have chosen science as my major at high school. I think the society I live in encourages young girls as myself to seek a higher education in any field. And I have chosen science because I thought it was a good experience, a good challenge, and because I think the subjects we study are interesting.
Some promising signs.
Can't wait to see what she discovers when she becomes a scientist. I want to thank all of our guests, Monica Pepe Altarelle, Regina Aguiare, Jamin Chin, and Jennifer Selvage. Now on the next show, the world has lost more than half of its wildlife population in the past 40 years. What caused it? And what are people doing to solve the decline? Send us your questions on that. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.